The world will tumble into turmoil.
Imagine the final chapter of your life, a story that's been in the making for years, filled with fear, doubts, triumphs, heartbreaks, love, loneliness, and loss finally ending. This is not because death is near, but because the world itself is folding up. Max Lucado points to wars, natural tragedies, and an overwhelming feeling of distress around the world as the signs that we are in the last phase. Now the question is there anything we can do about this eventuality?
We're not just in the end times, I believe we're in the end of the end times. Jesus, in his sermon regarding the end times, spoke about all the things that we're seeing now.
Max Lucado, a man with a deep-seated faith and a reputation for being compassionate, has delved into a subject that may make everyone shiver: the end times. He has been monitoring global events and has observed some disturbing trends, such as natural disasters, conflicts, and the general instability that appears to be engulfing society everywhere, which can make one feel as though the world is on the verge of collapse. These, in his opinion, are not only occurrences by chance, but rather indicators of something far greater. He has frequently examined how these crises relate to the end times events that Jesus described in the Bible, but Lucado is not trying to scare us into believing that the world will soon end. Rather, he wants to point out how these revelations can genuinely inspire hope and a little enthusiasm about what lies ahead. Now, why would Lucado choose this time to tackle something that seems so significant? He has observed that on every other headline, there is news of wars. Consider China and Taiwan's impending conflict, even Russia and Ukraine. Israel is another important country in these end times, according to Lucado.
The crazy weather patterns, the wars and the rumors of wars, and a long list of signs that he gave us. He said that all these are the beginning of labor pains.
In Matthew, Jesus warned of earthquakes, famines, nations rising up against one another, wars and rumors of war, and even the general fear that seems to be engulfing countries today. However, this is not just a phase. According to Lucado, it is a wake-up call to gain a heavenly perspective on what is ahead, and a sign that we may be living in the final days that Jesus foretold.
And so Jesus was speaking of a time in which the world will see not just those signs, but see them happen faster and see them happen with more intensity.
What seems intriguing is Lucado's analysis of the book of Revelation. A lot of readers lose themselves in a web of seals, beasts, and that fearsome 4 horsemen. However, Lucado has tried to decipher the puzzle and provide us with a more clear image. For him, Revelation serves as a kind of manual that reveals to us the awful events of a fallen world and the upcoming redemption. Even though there are some dreadful scenarios, such as the mark of the beast and the arrival of the Antichrist, Lucado believes that the story concludes in perfection and peace rather than fear.
The world will tumble into turmoil. And at some point after the rapture, the world will fall into this chaos, into this time of unprecedented darkness and confusion.
When it comes to the end times, Lucado makes it known that Israel is the center of everything. He believes that Israel plays a critical role in the end times prophecy, and he thinks that understanding the rapture and the events that follow would be impossible without taking into account Israel's role. For him, Israel isn't just another nation, but essential to God's plan for the world. He frequently emphasizes the significance of Israel's re-establishment as a nation in 1948, which he views as a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. And then, we get to major events, which Lucado believes will signal the actual end of the world, beginning with the rapture. Now, Lucado believes Israel's responsibility goes beyond its re-establishment. Imagine believers suddenly vanishing to meet Christ in the air. This isn't some illusion, because for Lucado, it could happen any day. In addition, Israel will experience a massive spiritual revival after the rapture occurs, and Lucado relies on the book of Revelation, which states that 12,000 members of each tribe, 144,000 Jews, will become evangelists during the time of tribulation. This group, which is under God's protection, will spread the gospel to those who are left behind, resulting in the biggest revivals the world will ever witness following the rapture. This is the point at which the Antichrist, a figure embodied by Satan, will begin to spread deceit and destruction like never before. However, Lucado sees this dark chapter as an introduction to the magnificent finale, which is the millennial reign of Christ, which will be for 1,000 years with believers. And this is Lucado's way of saying that in spite of all the terrifying events that lie ahead, the story ultimately ends with redemption.
Are you weary with the way the world is? Well, things will be made right again. Are you weary with the broken hearts, with the disease, with the depression, with the discouragement? Well, things will be made right again.
Max Lucado presents the end times in a way that goes beyond terrifying visions of the Antichrist or the chaotic events of the tribulation. He believes the millennial reign will give believers responsibilities and authority that mirror their faithfulness on earth. It will be a moment when you can actively share in the joy and harmony of a reclaimed creation, not just watching it happen. And what a work of creation it will be, a place of unbroken harmony, where everything functions as it should. Lucado's approach is refreshing because he encourages us to focus on our connection with Jesus in order to prepare for eternity, rather than letting fear of the future consume us. His desire is for us to live in expectation rather than fear and concerns that many of us have about life, death, and everything in between. Lucado has frequently stated that the thought of getting older has caused him to think more carefully about the meaning of life and what awaits each of us on the other side.
When Jesus was on earth, he raised 3 people from the dead. And I've often wondered, why just 3? And then it dawned on me, maybe he couldn't get any more volunteers. Because what they're enjoying is so spectacular.
According to Lucado, we are living in the church age, and the church is the reflection of God's kindness and mercy. He is convinced that believers have an amazing role to play in this crucial period, to show God's love and grace to a world in dire need, instead of sitting around doing nothing but waiting for the end of the world. Lucado goes one step further and presents the idea of what he refers to as the heavens timeline, a chronology that begins at the very beginning of creation and ends with the end times. He asserts that this chronology started with God's promise to Adam and Eve and proceeded through important events such as the covenants made with the children of Israel, Daniel's prophecies regarding the Messiah, and finally, the coming of Jesus.
Let's zoom out for a few moments just to make sure we're all together on the timeline. So somebody dies prior to the rapture, they go immediately into paradise, right? At the rapture, those who are on the earth will be caught up together with Christ.
After Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection, these significant events are a component of a larger divine plan that is manifesting remarkably accurately. In essence, the rapture will take place when believers are abruptly taken from this world and taken to be with Christ before the world plunges into tribulation, a time of chaos and suffering. Lucado points to passages like 1 Thessalonians 4:15-17. For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. This verse serves as the foundation for Lucado's interpretation of the rapture, which he views as a divine intervention that shields believers from the worst of what lies ahead. His view of the rapture is as a very comforting event, despite the fact that it can sound dramatic or even terrifying. He clarifies that the purpose of the rapture is to reassure believers that God will save his children from the approaching wrath and guarantee their safety with him through the most troubling times. Lucado is a firm believer of evangelism, particularly in light of his belief that the end of the world is near. He believes that this era of the church is our final opportunity to share the gospel with as many people as we can. He urges all believers to freely proclaim their beliefs out of love and urgency, rather than fear. And he takes this responsibility seriously. Are we indeed on the verge of this significant event? To that question, leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Till next time, thanks for watching.